Hello. Thank you, Kanesh, for organizing this event and gathering this group of global speakers here. I've been involved in many Gs, all the Gs, starting with 3G with Singular Wireless. So it is exciting to see this stage come through. And it's very interesting what the world looks like today and the role of the cloud companies and edge cloud that's being played. So I am today speaking less about core network or RF or microwave or performance or even AI. I am actually going to talk about what we're building, how we're building it, why we're building it, and the opportunities and challenges of this world that we're making full of 5G and AI and all kinds of clouds. Implications that we, engineers, leaders, and product managers need to consider. We have captured the world's attention with 5G, and I'm now always talking about use cases. Which use case is going to get us most traction? We have use cases in entertainment with cloud gaming that's immersive and interactive, it's multiplayer. We have location-based entertainment, enterprise automation, healthcare, whether it be remote health monitoring or actually hospitals where we assist remote procedures. There is transportation delivery, AI-based driver assistance, and deliveries by unmanned vehicles, as well as public safety and security, industrial operations. But what do all of these have in common is that they are public or private, digital or physical space transformed. We're touching every place and we're making it different. And the question is, are we prepared to do that? Do we have a rubric, a paradigm to do something with all this data and this large digital footprint that we'll create and the decisions that we'll have to make and the sense making of all the data that is real-time latency as possible? And the goal for us when we look at this is to touch every social system, every ecosystem. But what are the goals of the carriers and our partners to do is as cheaply as possible and as strategically as possible to bring the power of 5G, AI, edge, cloud together? But it also means that there are diverse cultures and equally intelligent vendors, partners, organizations with their own biases that are coming into place. So when we consider what do we have in common and what does our future look like, we also have to think about what the dilemmas are. But before we do that, I wanted to also look at the use case that seems rather innocuous that we think is very straightforward, which is some of the optimizations that we've been talking about with 5G within the carrier ecosystem, which is with optimization, automation, intelligent operations. So in these scenarios, they seem pretty straightforward. Do we need to worry about these as well? And I would say maybe or maybe not, because if you think about how you allocate resources or how you choose slicing or who to provide which resources for slicing, or even dynamically allocate resources or intelligent policy that I've been involved with, we're always making decisions about who gets the bigger piece of the pie. So, and that is built into the core and the bottom layer, the enabler layer of the network, which will then be leveraged by the use cases, by the people using the use cases. So the way we're thinking about this whole space kind of changes. And the question is, why does it matter? Why are we talking about when we're really, let's get with the business of building technology? It matters because trust impacts innovation. There's an Edelman report that came out in 2020 that says that most of the people have stopped trusting technology or are worried that we're kind of letting it go out of control. And the top two technologies they listed was 5G and AI, because there's so much hype, they're hearing about it, but they think that they don't really understand what's going to happen. And the reality is a lot of us who are building it are figuring it out as it goes along. And then there's a worry that the technology is making it hard for them to figure this out. And it's really interesting report, and it shows different results. You know, Singapore is in this list. The US has gone down with this technology, and obviously with what's going on now with COVID, et cetera, is impacting. And really, you know, this thing that everybody says, the government and regulators, it's their job to kind of keep us on track. Well, most people don't trust that governments will stay ahead on technologies and emerging technologies to do that. And why is trust important? Is it just a nice thing to do? I would say that trust is actually a very smart thing to do for our business, because trust helps us with adoption. Trust helps us get our cell sites built. Trust is needed for people to actually use this, for different vendors in this ecosystem to work together. So trust is a very, very important commodity and value system and currency really in this space that we need to take seriously. So what does that matter? What do we do? My experience has been with these years and years of making lots of products with lots of different vendors and startups and ecosystem, is you have to go back to the fundamental question of what is the future that we envision of communication actually look like? Who are the new stakeholders? We're always so wrapped up. We get so wrapped up in the actual technology and the specifics of, you know, where we're going to use ML and AI and who's kind of using the latest technology. We forget to ask, whose world are we disrupting? Whose values and whose are we disrupting? And do we actually need 5G and AI to solve that problem that we are trying to solve? Because the fit matters for trust. And once we say that, yes, we figured out AI is needed and 4G and always some version of 5G is needed, then we have to ask the question, do we have a common methodology, a decision criteria that works between the cloud vendors and the carriers who have very different cultures and different level of accountability and trust that we bring to the table? A framework that will help us navigate these difficult questions like data ownership, not only between public and private, but who owns the data? Who follows the data? What are we going to allow people to do with that data? So if somebody rolls out a interactive gaming, cloud gaming use case or software that's running on 5G, that another cloud company wants to now farm that data and sell those same users something else, and maybe the game is for kids or different age groups, are the carriers comfortable? Are the carriers handing off that data? Are the carriers comfortable being the enabler? So those are all questions that we have to kind of bring in. And if we do that, who's accountable? Who's responsible? Who kind of has the culpability of that decision making in that world that we make? There's been a lot of questions about AI, and it's sometimes trendy to ask about ethics, but really people are thinking about AI, responsible AI, trustworthy AI, to try to kind of move that decision making towards a technology, you know, technology versus technology. But it's always the people behind the technology that ultimately determine the goal for the technology. So we need to remember that. And when we combine the power of AI, amazing and tremendous power of AI with 5G and cloud, we also need to remember that we inherit the dilemmas and the problems and the issues that will come with it. So is it trustworthy? Who's responsible? You know, unless we figure some of these things out about avoiding bias and prejudice, when we dismantle or fundamentally transform our transportation systems, our access to healthcare or criminal justice system, or police monitoring or surveillance, these issues are going to trail us. And if we don't get ahead of them, they will get ahead of us. So one of the things that I've been spending a lot of time after having worked on, building and partnering in a 5G lab and bringing a bunch of people in the ecosystem and building cool and interesting looking AR, VR applications was a need. I saw a need for a framework, an innovation framework that can bring these different ecosystems together, but also think about the social systems that we're trying to fit in and change and shift or expand. And if we do it the right way, the middle sort of layer of responsible innovation, this new paradigm, which includes social considerations for social systems with tech innovation, which I'm calling a responsible innovation framework, but eventually we should drop the responsible. It should just be the way we innovate. This thinking about the market, laws and norms as influencers and partners rather than something that pushes us to make things, and thinking about how do we bring delight and trust and create open and safe and dependable and inclusive considerations and really create methodology, rubric for decision making. How do we choose how to implement or who to partner with or which vendor to align with or how to manage data will become really, really important. And so there's a lot of work going on behind this framework and applying it to specific scenarios around 5G and AI in different places. And of course, data is an integral part of it.
Excuse me.
Yes.
1 minute to wrap up, please.
Oh, thank you. And, I'm really, this is the last slide because I wanted you to, come and be part of this conversation. So I invite all the listeners and the participants in this panel to come add your point of view, because this is a collaborative exercise. It's an iterative exercise, and every decision that we make is an opportunity for us to get to this kind of world that I'm envisioning we would want to collectively create, where the value is greater. And the intent here is not to classify companies or people or products into sort of approved or unapproved, or responsible, irresponsible, ethical, unethical, or sort of create a moral code. But it's really, the goal is to highlight the gaps and our blind spots so that we can make better technology and consider what design criteria we should put into our products and our technology beforehand. And it's just really good practice, good engineering practices, sustainable practices, and allowing us to create kind of this more delightful open world that's also very dynamic and competitive and innovative. So it's really a vision, and the only way to get to that vision was methodology, tools, and really examples. So we're creating a repository of examples, so when people are running into problems and how they're doing it kind of correctly. And I have a white paper coming out shortly that I would love to share with you, but really I invite you to come and ask me questions and really put in your ideas of examples where you feel like you're following this rubric, or if something is missing in this rubric, adding to it. So it's really a community exercise that I hope you will find value and time to join. So thank you for your time and for listening today, and for sharing, your work with all of us. Thank you.